You know that moment when someone brings up something that happened and they remember it clearly? The exact words, the tone, where you were, what it meant. And you're just trying to find it. Not completely blank. There's something there. A faint outline, like a memory that never fully developed, but not enough to match what they're describing. So you nod, or you say, I think I remember. But you don't feel it the way they do. And sometimes, later on, it stays with you. Not the memory itself, but the feeling that you should have remembered it better. That maybe you missed something, or that something about you doesn't hold on to things the way it's supposed to. People don't always say it directly, but there's an assumption underneath it. That forgetting means you weren't paying attention. That it means you didn't care enough, that if something mattered, it would have stayed. And over time, those small assumptions can turn into something heavier. You start questioning your own recall, wondering why certain moments don't stick, why details fade faster for you than they seem to for others. But what if this isn't about carelessness at all? What if it's not about attention or effort or even memory in the way people usually think about it? Because when you look closely at people who forget things quickly, there's often something deeper shaping that pattern, something that isn't obvious from the outside. It's easy to think of memory as a kind of storage system, like your brain records events and keeps them neatly filed away. But that's not how it actually works. Memory is selective, it's emotional, it's influenced by your nervous system more than most people realize. In neuroscience, there's a process called encoding, which is how experiences get turned into memories in the first place. And here's the part that often gets missed. If your system isn't fully present during an experience, it doesn't encode it strongly. Not because you weren't physically there, but because on some level your attention was directed elsewhere. Maybe inward, maybe toward managing how you feel. There's research showing that when the brain is under even mild stress or emotional strain, it prioritizes regulation over detailed memory formation. In simple terms, your system chooses stability over storage. So instead of deeply recording the moment, it focuses on getting through it. And later, when you try to recall it, there's less there to retrieve. Not because it wasn't important, but because your brain handled it differently. For some people, this pattern starts early. If you grew up in an environment where things were unpredictable, or where you had to stay aware of subtle emotional shifts, your attention might have been trained in a very specific way. Not toward holding on to details, but toward scanning, adjusting, reading between the lines. That kind of awareness takes energy. And when your system is focused on navigating the present moment, it doesn't always invest in preserving it. So memories become lighter, less defined, easier to lose. There's also something else that happens over time. If you've had experiences where holding on to certain memories felt heavy or complicated, your brain can learn to let go more quickly. Not as a conscious decision, but as an adaptation. Because remembering isn't always neutral. Some memories come with emotion, with interpretation, with questions that don't have clear answers. And if your system has learned that it's easier to release than to carry, it starts doing that automatically, letting things pass instead of holding on to them. Not everything, but more than most people expect. That can show up in small ways. Forgetting conversations shortly after they happen, struggling to recall specific details even when you know the moment mattered, feeling like your memories are more about impressions than clear sequences. And from the outside, it can look like a lack of attention, but internally, it's often the opposite. It's a system that's been doing a lot behind the scenes, managing, filtering, prioritizing, sometimes at the cost of retention. And it's important to say this clearly. This way of processing isn't better or worse than someone who remembers everything in detail. It's not less intelligent. It's not less thoughtful. It's just a different pattern. Some people store deeply and revisit often. Others experience more fluidly and move forward. Neither is more correct. They just serve different internal needs. But there's a quieter layer to this that doesn't always get talked about, because sometimes the same person who forgets quickly still carries certain things very deeply. Not everything fades equally. You might forget the details of a conversation, but remember exactly how it made you feel. You might lose the sequence of events, but hold on to a single moment that stood out without knowing why. There's a kind of selectivity in it, where your system doesn't keep everything, but what it does keep, it holds in a different way. And that can feel confusing, because it doesn't follow the usual logic. It's not about importance in a general sense. It's about what your nervous system marked as meaningful, what it had the capacity to hold at the time. There's also a trade-off here. When your mind lets go quickly, it can make space. You're not weighed down by every past interaction. You're not constantly replaying details or overanalyzing what happened. There can be a kind of lightness in that, a forward movement. But the cost is that sometimes you wish you could revisit things more clearly, that you could access moments the way others seem to, that you could hold on to certain experiences just a little longer. And living in that space, between ease and absence, isn't something most people talk about. So if you've ever felt like your memory doesn't work the way it's supposed to, like things slip through faster than you expect, like you're always just slightly out of sync with how others recall the past, it doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It usually means your brain learned to prioritize something else: regulation, adaptation, presence in a different form. And once you start to see it in that way, it changes the feeling around it. It stops being a fault you need to fix and starts becoming a pattern you can understand. Not everything your mind lets go of is lost. Some of it was never meant to be held in detail. Some of it was processed in ways that don't leave clear traces, but still shape how you move through the world. And that kind of processing, quiet, invisible, and efficient, has its own kind of intelligence. So if parts of your memory feel soft around the edges, if moments fade faster than you expect, if you've ever wondered why you can't always hold on to things the way others do, there's more to that than it seems. Not problems, just patterns that formed for reasons your mind hasn't fully explained to you yet. And if this feels familiar, there are probably other ways your mind works quietly in the background that you haven't put words to yet.